Hey, good evening. Welcome, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Housing Committee for November 6, 2024. I am Kathy Hunter, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. And tonight we are joined by Elaine Feldman, Chris Dickerson, Jonathan Lofters, Lou Schaefer, and we have Mary Dean on the phone. So the first item on our agenda are the minutes of October 9th, 2024. Did everybody get a chance to look at those minutes? Okay. Is everybody okay with those minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay. So Mary, Chris made a motion and Elaine second. All in favor? Okay, and we're all good with the minutes. All right, so that's done. I don't see anybody here for public comments, so I'm just going to skip over that one. And I'm just going to give a quick housing chair report. I did want to report back from our investigation into 211 because at our last meeting we did talk about the fact that there was 244 calls made into the 211 system, and so that led to a conversation as to what are those numbers and what does that represent. So with that, I followed up with Jen Paredes, who is the executive director of Bethel Center, and she's the one that gave me the dashboard information on that. And so she said, well, let's call the 211 folks and get them in, and they could, discuss how those numbers are derived. And so there was a meeting set up. Unfortunately, last minute, I was not able to make that meeting. Kathy Austin, who co-chairs the Human Services Commission, did attend the meeting. There was a follow-up meeting on that. So, we discussed what was the outcome of that meeting. So basically, the 211 information is still considered a very important data point. It is a barometer of need, and it does. But what it does, it records who's calling from Woodbridge in the category of request. Doesn't verify the fact that it's a Woodbridge resident. So if someone's calling from Cat's Deli or Starbucks or JCC, there's no verification that it's somebody from Woodbridge. Also, each call is counted as a request. So if someone should decide they're going to call 100 times, that's counted as individual requests. So even though I think the likelihood of these calls that these represent people not from Woodbridge, or that in fact there's somebody that's calling 100 times, is probably unlikely. The fact is it's not verifiable as to whether or not it's a Woodbridge resident calling, and what that, whether or not it's something where they call multiple times. So the conversation went that a better source of information is studying the Alice report for Woodbridge. And I think some of us are familiar with the Alice report. It's a report that's put out by the United Way. It stands for Asset Limited Income Constraint Employment, and that represents people who are, they're working minimum wage, lower paid jobs, but they're, they could be, struggling with just basic costs of living, and it could be like a paycheck away from, eviction or really struggling. So in Woodbridge, 21% of the population in Woodbridge are considered Alice households.
How was the information gathered, Kathy?
For the Alice?
For Alice report?
That is, the United Way, the United Way does that, and I would imagine that's, the American, Community Survey when they do that. And that's the survey information directly from the town.
Can you send us this Alice report for Woodbridge?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think it'd be helpful to read it, then discuss it versus discuss it, then read it.
Well, yeah, and
Okay, because I don't know what it is. You're
Oh, you
explaining,
never
I'm writing
know?
it down, I'm writing it down as we're talking.
Really?
So I've never seen it.
Okay, yeah, no, it's pretty, it is common, I guess for people in, you
Has
know,
everybody
this-
else read it?
Well, only because I read the whole report, no, but I read about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what they are gonna do though is to create a report that is going to be tailored for Woodbridge, that really gives us good, you know, information and specific to Woodbridge in
Well,
terms.
what are we using now? You just said 21% of Woodbridge's population are asset constrained.
Right.
So where did that number come from, and can we see that information so we?
Yeah,
can-
I could, I
Yeah,
mean, I
if you
will.
can send that, that'd be great.
I
We
could
can look at
send
it at
that-
the next meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I could send that, when I get home tonight, I could send you the Alice report. I've sent that, we've sent that before. I know you've had the
How
Alice
long
report.
ago? You
I
sent
know-
it in the last couple
I know
months?
you're the new
Yeah.
kid on the block,
Yeah.
but
So I'm trying to catch up.
we have gotten, we've gone through these Alice reports, you
Look,
know.
I'm building a portfolio. here.
Yeah, well,
It's
if you were here from the beginning, you would
Yeah, it'd be thick.
have a truckload. So I do give out a lot of reports,
Yeah.
that people, I'm sure,
But
keep
I
under.
follow up on that though a little more, this is what you had was interesting, I didn't know that. But Elaine and I spoke to both Jen and to Kathy Austin as part of this, what do we call it, All in Woodbridge?
I guess we're gonna call it all in.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
And
would
she
that be
was there.
something that's under further in community conversations, or is this something related to the
They're
211?
most interested in housing more than anything else in the world
Okay.
that they discussed there. But we asked after the meeting, Elaine and I spoke to both Kathy and to Jen, and they had mentioned that they were working with you on this. But she pointed out that she made a mistake, or that it was misleading, I should say. The document that said 236 Woodbridge neighbors called for assistance last year. Nearly 70% were looking for shelter. What she said, though the 70% were housing-related claims that weren't necessarily looking for shelter, they were looking for information on housing, and only, what did she say, 20% of that figure? It was a very small figure, it was like maybe 20 of them called.
Yeah,
for
there
housing.
was, she looked at the
She
wrong.
said she would have to correct that.
She looked at the wrong dashboard. The one she did previously was correct.
Mm-hmm.
So
'Cause
it's 20-ish calls, not 240.
No,
Oh,
it was
no.
240 calls that came in.
Yeah. But how many
Um,
calls came in for people looking for housing assistance?
For shelter, it was 20% as opposed to the 70%. The 70% was the breakdown of the calls for housing related. They broke it down to different aspects of housing related, be it need for shelter, needed for rental assistance, needed eviction prevention. So there was a whole different list. So there's like two different, if you look at the Connecticut
Because
CT.
the last meeting, you said that 236 Woodbridge residents called for housing assistance. So that's broad, but now we're narrowing it down and breaking it up
Right.
into
Right.
different little
And-
pockets.
And in fairness to Kathy, she didn't say that she was reading off a publication that
Yeah,
was
so
put
I'm
out
just
by-
writing down what
Yes.
she's reading. Okay,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah,
know we
so
talked
we're-
about that data, and now we're getting a better sense of what that is. Okay.
Right, but the prior dashboard she did was correct, because I did verify that one. This one I didn't like check right away because I had gotten that the morning of the event, and I didn't look at it until we started looking at it at our meeting. But anyway, the good news is that we're gonna have important data we're gonna be able to use to really, you know, help us assess the needs of housing in Woodbridge, which I think is a real positive. So, you know, as soon as those reports are ready, certainly I will share that. But for people, now, would everybody like the Alice report?
I know I've seen it at some point, but if you're sending it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the, if you look at the United Way, and Warner, good to see you back. I hope Colorado was good to you. Okay.
I think it's on.
Yeah, if you could just send it out to us,
Yeah.
then it's part of our email documentation. So
Okay.
we have it.
I could do that. Maybe we even put it on our website.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, if there's a Woodbridge breakdown, I will get the Woodbridge breakdown. Because I know they do say 21% of Woodbridge residents that fall under the Alice category, so it would be good to see that number. It's like over 600. Yeah, so it's significant. All right, I want to make sure I have my to-do list. I want to send off Alice report. And we also discussed, because I had Kathy Austin on the phone, in addition to United Way, working on tailoring reports, I asked Kathy Austin, what's your local data? Human Services Commissions, are you reporting on this? Are you reporting on the needs? What is the local data? It didn't seem like they were collecting local data, so she did say that there was they have a social worker, and the social worker has a caseload, and the social worker does input information into a case management system. So I asked her to see whether or not there's a way of getting aggregate data. If you're collecting information, is there a way of breaking it down? What are the needs? Do they have a food insecurity need? Do they have a housing need? Do they have a domestic violence need, a mental health need? I mean, so there's different, it's good for human services, but the housing aspect would also be good for us, just to get a better rounded idea as to what's happening. So that's the 211 update. Is there any questions on that before I go on?
I don't know how much of that 21% is localized.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I don't know how much of that 21% is localized to maybe the senior housing, versus property owners and stuff.
Yeah, we don't know until we see what they come
We
up
have to
with.
see where the data came from, and because you said it's 21% of the population, or is it 21% of the households? Because the households would be about 600. The population would be 2,000.
Yeah, I'm
Ballparkish.
trying to think of.
Okay, so that's an important
I'm trying
to
to
know.
picture the data.
Yeah.
I could actually look it up.
Well, if you send it to us, we can look at it the next week.
Yeah, I'm not. I guess the short answer is I'm not sure. I think it's
Okay.
households, because I think that's how they collect it.
It makes sense if it's 600, roughly 21% of our households.
Yeah, then that would,
Okay.
yeah. I'm not good at quick math. All right, so I also want to report that I did attend a couple conferences, housing conferences. I did send those out from the last meeting, but there was a conference from the Partnership for Strong Communities, building momentum for housing supply reforms, and that was good, a good session. They had somebody from the national level, from the Mircattis Center, George Mason University, and it was just interesting to hear him talk about on a national level that, that nationally all across the board that they're looking at housing reform, particularly how to claw back, authority that the states give to localities to zone land, because our zoning regulations, our power to zone comes from the state, and what the state gives, it could take back. So there's discussions to kind of scale back the authority in order to ensure that we meet obligations for creating the housing that's needed for folks. And then State Representative Jason Rojas and Majority Leader Eleni DeGraw, she co-chairs the Planning and Development Commission on the state committee on the state level, and they just talked about as the legislative session comes up, just how they're going to work on getting housing reforms through, and one of the comments they talked about was that it seems like that you have to frame it more in terms of improving Connecticut's economy, how it's needed to inspire economic growth, as opposed to having a moral imperative to do housing, which is a little sad that that's, you know, the approach you have to take, but it is, you know, incrementally, there has been changes made in getting towns and you know, the region to address housing. And so there's slowly been like this progress in that, but it's been slow. And then I did go to a DOH conference, and that was interesting. And our first selectman actually presented on a panel for the DOH Department of Housing conference, and it was a panel that was facilitated by Mike Santoro, by Ben Lovejoy. Also, they had Mark Barnhart there, who who I've talked about before. He's the one that has done the information in tracking school-age children against multi-unit developments to show that there's no impact on those types of developments with the school system. So that he did a really good job. And let's see what else. And then just to report on the Warner. The first selectman did meet with Jaffa and the current owner, and they're currently working on getting in a new operator, owner for the Warner. So that's still kind of a slow, ongoing process, but it's in the works. And, you know, last thing I wanted to mention is that from the planning and zoning meeting, I learned that there's going to be a roundtable discussion for the POCD for committees and commissions. That's going to be scheduled for some time in January. You know, the date hasn't been set, and how that looks hasn't been set, but it looks like we're going to have, you know, some time with the consultant that's doing the planning for the POC, or doing the report for the POCD. So that is all I have for my chair report. Is there any questions on anything there?
Just one question, the zoning enabling act, that was passed a long time ago, wasn't it?
Well, the zoning enabling act, yeah, was passed.
Like in '89 maybe or something?
I thought it
I mean,
was passed.
it's not something new, it's been around for.
It's been around, yeah, that's when they, it probably goes back way before that, the zoning enabling act. There was significant updates though made in 2021, significant
That's
updates.
right.
Yeah, so that's why they really made it a requirement that you had to address housing disparities, you had to create, you know, housing choice, you had to have housing for, you know, low-income people. So that puts more of the teeth in there, and that doesn't set, you know, like you have to the number, you know, doesn't say, you know, 30% of your housing supply has to be this, but it does say that there's a requirement that you have to create housing for, you know, a diverse array of people. So that's, you know, so again, that's one of the slowly clawing away some of the authority of the towns to say you do have to do this. This is not optional. So with that, I think the bulk of our meeting tonight really want to get into this task of providing input into you know, the housing goal, because I like to be able to they gave us till like the end of December, but I really would like to get something earlier, but if we need to work on it more. So I did like a first crack at it, and then Chris did give some information that we could talk about, because we could look to see where that could be incorporated.
And Chris,
Yes.
thank you for sending that information. I had never seen the superintendent's report, and was surprised to see how much the school population varies through the years. I never would have guessed that.
I'm trying to think where I came
Yeah.
upon it, but our town is unique in that if you look at the region, school populations are in decline. But in Woodbridge, our school population is rising. And when you look at the Town Plan and Zoning Commission's Plan of Conservation and Development, one of the slides shows that elementary school population is rising, and that Amity Middle and Amity High School are declining. And then they have at the bottom a net decline, which is misleading because we're doing a plan of conservation and development for Woodbridge, not Amity. So they should take out the Amity Middle School, Amity High School numbers because they're misleading, because that includes Orange and Bethany, whose school population is declining while ours is rising. And that's an important distinction which needs to be made, because when we're looking at housing, and the person you referenced who talked about the number of students per unit, the superintendent made it very clear, we're an anomaly. People don't buy a house here and then start a family in general. They have a family and they move to Woodbridge when it's time to send their kids to school. And I see that in my neighborhood all the time. We have people that move in with children to go to school.
Yeah.
So it means that our numbers are different, and we should be looking at our numbers differently. We can't just use the generic numbers. We have to use the numbers which are specifically for Woodbridge, which is going to change a lot of things, especially the POCD is going to change because of that. And also how we look at housing is going to change, because we can't look at it as 0.1 student per household if that's not what the Woodbridge data is showing.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get into the, types of housing that we're talking about that's not gonna generate the population that
Mhm.
you're talking about. But, so what I did with the housing framework, I first looked at our current POCD. And we did go through this extensively at a prior meeting, but the first thing is, the plan does look at demographics, and really, our current plan is very heavily focused on demographics, linking demographics to the need for housing. And they point to, at the time, they were pointing to shrinking average households in an unbalanced market when comparing household sizes against the number of bedrooms in current housing. So there were smaller household sizes the households were basically overhoused. The plan did talk again, the same issue we're facing in Woodbridge 10 years later. An issue of housing affordability of 33% of households paying above the threshold. I thought was really interesting was that the Woodbridge 10 years ago was at 1.1% affordable housing stock, and we still at 1.1, even with all these different, ideas and strategies to increase affordable housing. We are not doing well in that category. So hopefully, when we do this POCD, we're going to make a market difference in that percentage.
So there hasn't been any change in the number of affordable housing units built in Woodbridge since Warner was built, correct?
There hasn't been any affordable housing. I mean, there's some, what adds to it from time to time is if you have a chattel mortgage, if there's somebody that has a tenant voucher or a project-based voucher, that does add to it.
Do we know if anybody has those in Woodbridge?
We do. They do have a couple,
Okay,
and they do try to track it.
okay.
Yeah.
Who's they? Who tries to track that?
Somebody, who tracks it? Somebody in town hall, and I may not get the who right.
And Section 8 would be included in that if there were
Yeah.
any-
Yeah, if you have a Section 8 voucher, that would count.
But I think it was you that pointed out at one point when we were going over this 1.18 figure, but the figure may be less now.
Oh,
because
it's
yes,
less. No, it's not.
because
It was
we put-
1.18.
Yep, and it's probably less than that
It's
now.
got to be less because
Yeah.
Because
more
of the
housing
capital.
built
More
in
houses are
30
built,
years,
yeah.
and there's been no more affordable housing built in the same
Yep.
time period.
Right.
So the number, hopefully the number is not exactly the same, because if it's the same, then it's wrong.
Yep.
Let's hope it's not the same.
How did we get that number? Was that from Scrog?
It's from the housing appeals list. So they post, the town has to send in every year, they have to update their housing appeals list. And so they report what houses, what units are eligible to be on that housing appeals list.
So they'll be doing that again in another couple of
They
months.
do that every year. I'm not sure when they do it, but I think the last time I saw a number, updated number was 1.12. You know, but you know, it's 1.12 or 1 point whatever. It's still not. We're still not doing that good. So I'm not gonna like, you know, get like wonky over those numbers. We need more housing. We need more affordable housing. What else? So they talked about a housing action plan. I'm not sure exactly what the housing action plan was, besides just saying that they were looking at creating options for Woodbridge's youngest and oldest families to help longtime residents stay in town and those starting out to develop roots. And I think that's kind of the same thing that we're talking about as well. Actions included updating zoning regulations in the village district only, and limiting multifamily housing to 1 and 2 bedroom units in the village zones. So they're talking about, you know, increasing housing, but limiting it to just 1 and 2 units. And then they did recommend for the Country Club of Woodbridge to consider age-restricted lifestyle housing, cluster housing plan development district to take advantage of the site's unique access to public water, sewer, and transportation infrastructure. And that, you know, that has been in our recommendations, and that still remains the same in terms of the Woodbridge Country Club. So the proposed framework. So I did like a little kind of like a prelude to add in just what we're doing, and I just want to make sure folks are okay with this type of introduction. And this is not like, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace. You know, you can take this back and you could, play around with the text. But this is what when I was thinking about what do I want to say, or what do we want to say, in terms of what's different from what was done 10 years ago. And I think, you know, from the way I see it, responding to current conditions, Woodbridge, as with other towns in Connecticut, as in the whole nation, has a heightened acknowledgement of its obligation to address a housing crisis and significant disparities in housing needs. And I think we could, agree on that there is a heightened awareness. I mean, unless you lived under a rock for the past 2 years, there's been lots of articles on the need for housing. And there's been, Mary, you were saying something?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Sorry. And then talk about recent updates. So recent updates to Woodbridge zoning regulations, part of our update included the language from the Zoning Enabling Act that was updated in 2021. So we updated our zoning to make sure we included the language that talks about promoting housing choice and economic diversity in housing for both low and moderate income households to comport with the state's Zoning Enabling Act. And talk about how the town is also actively working on a regional basis with the South Central Regional Council of Government. And then talk about the fact that the town did adopt, affordable housing plan that was spearheaded by the Housing Opportunity Study Committee, and then we were subsequently authorized to advance the plan and ensure the town remains in compliance with state and federal housing laws. So, so then as I spoke before last meeting, what I did was I took our, what we felt as a housing committee, what were priorities in the housing plan, because as you remember, RKG did a kind of like a template, like the plan kind of looked the same for 13 towns that it did the housing plan for. But we wanted to personalize it to talk about, to really bring out what was important to us in terms of moving the housing agenda forward. So, so I listed those items from the, and I'm not gonna go, reading this, we've read this, we've gone through this before, but there's some important points there that I thought should be highlighted in the POCD in terms of what we felt was important.
So you're talking about the housing committee highlighted specific actions in the preface of the affordable housing plan, and then those bullet points. That's what
Right.
you're talking about,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So, how would we address the expansion of sewer and water infrastructure? I mean, we can say that we want to do this, but shouldn't the POCD have a general idea of how they would do that?
Yeah, we would.
Where would the money come from? Where would the expansion be?
Yeah, well, the POCD doesn't get into,
Does it get into those details?
does not get
Okay.
into those details.
All right.
They have, it's a general
Okay,
view.
So it's
a
just general.
Yeah, it's very, very general, the POCD.
But there are specific agencies that do this specific work, right?
Yeah, no, and this is a big thing. I have to tell you that there's going to be a lot of funding, particularly in this legislation coming up, because this has been coming up, and there was discussions even at the housing conferences, like, one of the barriers, they talk about barriers to housing in rural towns and, towns that don't have the infrastructure, is the fact that there's a lack of public water, public sewer, and there's going to be significant funding that the state's going to be providing for expanding that. And if you look at as you've looked at the Sprague's regional plan, they expanded, they had an exercise where they expanded the sewer connections, the sewer water connections by what would it look like if you expanded that by a half a mile, and what sites would then become available for potential development. So they're thinking about this because they understand that this is an issue, is the fact that there isn't this. And not every town has the infrastructure that's needed to create the density of housing.
So you're saying that the money for this would come from the state, it would not be from Woodbridge?
Would not come from Woodbridge, no. It would come from, in my opinion, it would come from the state, or if a developer wants to come in and wants to create a development, they could also, pay for the connections. I mean, there's plenty of developments that, I look in Orange and they had to pay pretty big bucks for each connection to hook up to the sewer line. That's Ascana. They had to do that. So it could be underwritten by the development as well. But I'm not thinking that it's going to be something that the town is going to be bonding for to do this. I'm thinking this is something that would be covered by state funding in promoting housing. Not to say they couldn't do it, but that's not how I was thinking it. So these are the points that were brought up. I don't know if we want to go beyond and also include the housing goals that were in there, but it could start getting a little redundant. But I'm even thinking within the POCD, because I've done a couple POCDs in my life and housing plans, and what we did was just put the link in for the housing plan, just linked it into the POCD. So if someone's looking at the POCD, they see the housing plan, because that's important to have that in there, because a lot of times when you're going for funding, you have to say that your actions are consistent with your plan of conservation and development. So that's another way. So I'm not sure exactly how we're going to get all our strategies in there, whether or not it's a summation, but I would probably recommend that they just link the entire plan in there so it could be referenced, since it's already approved by the town. So that's my thought. So before I get into like 10-year goals, is there any questions in terms of the affordable housing plan? Should we,
Well, I just was confused by the bullet that Woodbridge has recently amended its zoning regulations to permit multifamily housing under some circumstances.
yeah,
I thought that any house anywhere in Woodbridge could be converted into a two-family,
oh, well, the multifamily is defined
Oh, oh,
as greater than 2 units. Yeah.
greater than two, okay,
Yeah. So,
that explains it.
yeah. Yeah, there's multifamily housing in Woodbridge is really, really relegated to a very, very small area in Woodbridge because it's, you know, it sounded good that, you know, you could do multifamily housing anywhere where there's public water, public sewer, not in the public water supply watershed.
Leaves hardly anything.
But when you break that down, there isn't any property. And the main piece of property that fits that category is the Woodbridge Country Club. So, you know, so they when they did this zoning, and this was when they approved the Open Communities Alliance application. So they approved it with modifications, and this is how they modified it. So it's, you know, it's, the modification is just, it doesn't really open you up to many options as to where you can have this type of housing. So it really does just limit it.
This zoning regulation, which I'm not familiar with, would allow property owners that have a two-family house to add an additional dwelling unit. Is that correct? Or more than one additional dwelling unit?
Well, it's
If
separate things.
If it's in city water, city sewer, not in the watershed. So let's say in the flats, would that regulation allow property owners to convert a two-family house into a 3+ family house?
Yeah.
And that's significant
Yeah.
because there may be opportunities there where you're not impacting green space, but you're expanding your housing options.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think if you start noodling, there's a lot of other, you know, different options that you could think of. But yeah, you could certainly convert, you know, if you have a big house. I mean, if you have that, and there's some area, you know, there are some areas in, you know, probably in the, I don't want to say village. I mean, I rather call it the flats.
It's the flats.
It's the flats,
I
right?
live there, it's the flats.
Okay, it's the flats. You know, when I wasn't paying attention to anything and I heard village district, you know, I thought the village district was here because it looks like, because it's got the church, it's got the, you know, I thought this was the village district, and I didn't realize that that they were just trying to change the name of the flats. But
Well, another confusing point is that the previous development applied for construction on the Bradley Road property was called Woodbridge Village. So that made it more complicated,
Yeah.
more confusing.
yeah,
Because that was Woodbridge Village, and then we're gonna call that the Village District, and is this the Village District? It's the flats.
yeah. So, but I think as long as no one's offended by me calling the flats, I would like to call it the flats. Okay, so why don't we, I just want to go through this a little bit more until we get to the 10-year goals, and I think that's when we should jump into Chris's comments. Does that sound good? All right, so we discussed updating the town's zoning regulations, the key prerequisite for developing more housing. And then we talked about the limited but significant update to Woodbridge zoning regulation that allow for multi-housing areas served by public water sewer not located in public water supply watershed represents extremely limited areas. So that's what we had just talked about. And what I did here was included our recommendation to Coupop, when they were initially asking for recommendations on the country club, but then they decided not to do the country club, they decided to start with the other properties. But we did do an initial recommendation to the, to Coupop. So I put this information in there, because I thought it was important to just justify, why we feel as a committee, this property needs to be used for housing. In part, we're not saying the whole thing. Certainly having housing that incorporates open space is something that should be done and is desirable. If you have the higher density housing, you can create more open space for the community. So with that, is there any questions on what we just reviewed? And again, this is not like,
It says in here that this is the only property, right, I want to make sure I say this correctly. Does it say that town-owned properties? So the Country Club of Woodbridge is not the only town-owned property that would fit these qualifications. You have public water, public
I'm sorry,
sewer.
where are you
I'm just
looking?
thinking about this whole section here on areas served by public water and sewer and not located in the public water supply watershed that are town-owned. Now, I do not know where the sewer lines run up on Center Road. There's a water line that runs up Center Road, but you have several town-owned properties with city water access on Center Road.
Right.
And you also have the West River Field, which has city water, city sewer, and it's not in the watershed. So we have many more properties than
But
just this one.
I think but isn't that recreation?
It doesn't say anything about excluding recreation, it just says town-owned. I didn't know if
Oh,
recreation,
well,
I didn't know
yeah,
recreation was
maybe-
excluded, so we should
I'm
probably
talking
put that in
about-
there.
yeah.
It's recreation, I'm not advocating for it,
Yeah.
but I'm just stating that if we're gonna say there's only one property,
Yeah,
we're not giving the full picture.
I think the idea was that would be capable of, because you wouldn't be able to without, if something's designated for recreation, you're not gonna be able to put.
I don't know if it's been deed restricted for recreation,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think
But,
it is, but the sewer does not go up.
Doesn't come up this far, how far up does the sewer go?
Because
Because the maps on the SCROG maps,
Yeah,
I
it
couldn't
does-
see, I
it
couldn't
does
read them,
kinda,
they're too small to read.
the way they,
That's bad. That's bad.
I think it just comes up by the JCC.
Okay,
And then it doesn't come up, I mean, there's water there.
there's city water.
There's city water,
The-
but
yeah,
there
city water
isn't-
line comes up.
There isn't public
Yeah, but
sewer.
there's not a sewer, so,
That's snaked around the schools.
yeah.
But,
There's a sewer line that goes to Amity High School?
yes,
Okay,
but that's,
okay,
just for the high school. So, anyway.
all right.
Well, again, tweak the language. This is not, this is our product that we're gonna be
Yep.
presenting. This is not my report. This is, we need to have everybody's input from the committee in terms of how this plays out. So let's go to, Chris's. So, I do appreciate all these comments, and I think some of them we could be working in. I just want to say for the, in terms of the elementary school, that is a topic that's, we have talked about a lot in this committee in terms of the increasing the school population. And, but certainly the housing developments that we're looking at are in the 1-2 bedrooms. We really, at this point, we like to focus on, housing for seniors. There's a need for housing for seniors, elderly, that need to downsize, and just, new people starting out, young professionals, we're really focused on that type. So certainly, if we're talking about, like, if we, just as a hypothetical, if we're looking to put 70 single-family houses on a Woodbridge Country Club that have 3-4 bedrooms, then yeah, that would be a problem, but we're not looking at that at all.
When I built the last house, and I finished it last year, it's a one-bedroom, 1,000 square foot unit. And I built it basically for myself, thinking I might move there, but I haven't moved there yet. But when I built it and I gave it to a real estate agent to rent, most of the people interested in renting the property had children. And it is a one-bedroom. There's not another bedroom. It's just one bedroom. I built it for me, a single person. So if we were to build 1 and 2 bedroom units, in my experience, there would be many, many children in those units. So we need to think very carefully about how and what we want to recommend. Okay, that's in my experience last year when I rented that property. Okay, so
Yeah, but you you wouldn't be able to rent to a family a one-bedroom apartment, that would be.
shouldn't be able to, but
You're not.
there's a lot of pressure. So if you were to build 2 bedroom units, you can almost certainly expect there to be children.
Well, that's not what
Okay.
they're.
But you just said 1 to 2 bedroom. That's why I'm saying, if you're gonna say 2 bedroom units, that's dramatically different than 1 bedroom units.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I could send you, again, experiences from different towns, and this has been studied, and I know
I'm
you're
talking
saying.
about Woodbridge, okay?
Yeah, but Woodbridge, Woodbridge is unique, it's not like any other town in the state. I don't think so.
Okay,
Um,
but it is. You can think it's not, but it is
Okay,
unique. Okay, you
I'm
can
just-
think it's not, but it is.
I'm gonna put
So if we're
that.
gonna put something in there about language about bedrooms, we have to be cognizant of the fact that this is gonna impact our school system.
Yeah, but
Okay.
but again, I think, Woodbridge has to decide, do you wanna just stay, not grow and die, or do you wanna actually grow? I mean, the problem is Woodbridge has not grown since 1990. That's a problem, and that's showing up in
That's a different topic, okay?
Well,
We're
I-
talking about
but-
bedrooms and school-age children and how that's gonna impact our
Well, but
elementary school.
I think,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have to plan for that. I mean,
Okay.
you're gonna have to.
So you're saying that
Yeah.
part of this plan should be building another elementary school?
I'm not saying building
Okay.
another, you're not gonna need, but I think adding, if it ends up adding 100 children to the school population over 12 grades, like two to 3 different classes, you're not going to need a new school, because that's not gonna have,
Nope.
you're not gonna have
I
this.
agree,
this
I agree.
impact.
If we added 100 children over 12 grades, we wouldn't have to add another school.
Right.
Right.
But I'm looking at your goals, and you're looking at 500 affordable housing units and 1,000 market rate units.
We're talking over 10 years.
Over 10 years, that means we're gonna build another school,
No.
over 10 years.
And also, as Lou said many months ago, and I couldn't agree more, bringing children into community, it's actually a wonderful thing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But we
Deal
need to
with-
plan for that. We need to plan for
Right,
that.
and I'm
Okay?
not saying that there's
Yeah.
there's gonna be zero impact.
Okay.
But I think as a town, you wanna plan to grow and prosper. You can't have a
But
zero
growth is a relative thing, okay? 1,500 units is a 40% increase in the number of houses that we have now. That's a massive increase. That's massive growth. That's a game-changing look for our town. So if we
Well-
look at maybe much smaller number for the next 10 years, that might be more reasonable, a more incremental growth approach versus literally changing the entire complexion of the community.
Changing the entire complexion of the
If you increase the housing stock by 40%, that would change the community.
You just said complexion.
Yes, the whole, I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about,
Well, I mean,
I'm
it
talking
just-
about fire,
I'm-
police, school systems, public health, all these things, roads.
Yeah,
public safety,
and I think
traffic.
I think it'd be a
Yeah.
wonderful thing that, when you look at the growth of Woodbridge, from like 1950 to, and make it sound like we just want to preserve Woodbridge as it's always been. Woodbridge has been changing over the years.
Absolutely it has, yeah.
In 1950 it was like 3,200 population. 1970 it grew from 32 to like over 7,000. And then in 1990, it went to 9,000, and then it just stayed there. And now we're getting older, and you know, we're having issues where we're having a high taxes, you know, we're having problems with you know, older, you know, population not being able to go anywhere. We have our business district is just, it's just, you know, I'm sorry.
Struggling, it's struggling.
It is,
Yep.
yeah, being on planning and zoning, how many restaurants and establishments that we approve that just belly up and they don't.
Yep.
So you need growth, you need people, we need
Yep.
to revitalize this town, because right now there's just a whole lot of nothing going on. And unless you start working on, you know, growing the town with bringing, you know, families in, bringing other people in, bringing people that work in this town. The fact that 93% of the workforce in Woodbridge live outside of town, you know, I mean, these are people that could be connected to the community. I know you're going to say that, where did that number come from?
Well, I know where the number came from. It came
But-
from the American Community Survey, which is a flawed number, but it's
not-
okay.
But it's not,
But we're-
it's not off the mark.
But
most
we
people-
don't know that. But we are
people-
building, and I'm excited that
most
we're
peop-
building.
Yes.
We built the Toll Brothers development, which I'm pleasantly surprised at how well that is coming
Yeah,
out.
I'm-
We've
I'm-
got sidewalks around there now, which is nice. The 2030 committee, which I'm on, we're on the cusp of a major redevelopment in the Flats area of traffic calming, sidewalks, enhancing businesses. We've got almost a $9 million grant from the federal government to do this. And that's in the actual design phase, not planning. Now we're in design. So that's gonna happen like in 2026. But that's been a 4.5-year process to get to this point. So what I'm trying to recommend is that if we can look at this more incrementally, we can be successful. But I think looking at this, saying in 10 years we're gonna add 1,500 units, it took 4.5 years for us to get to a point where we're gonna change the streetscape in the Flats. I don't know how we're gonna do that in 10 years. I can't see how we're gonna do it. There's so much more involved in that than what we're trying to do with 2030.
These are goals.
Yeah,
And I
no, I think it's more
50
aspirational. I think goals should be more specific and more attainable.
Okay.
No, I understand what Chris is saying, and he's beginning to sell me on that. No, I think if we reach for the moon, that's always a good thing. But we're not going to be able to sell it, and nothing's going to happen.
This is the
And we
ch-
got to do something because we've been stagnant.
This
for
is
so
the
long.
challenge. I want to accomplish something. I didn't come on this board to sit here at meetings. I came to accomplish something. I want a place where my mother can move to. She's 84 years old and she lives in a house that I grew up in. Okay? It's way too big for her, but there's no place for her to go.
Yeah,
Where can she
absolutely.
go?
Yeah.
So we should be looking, I mean, that should be one of the main focus points is where do older people in town go? Because that actually brings in younger people. When that house is sold and she can downsize, then you've got a family that comes in. But it's not 1,500 units. These are much smaller and incremental changes to our town.
Okay, we could come to a consensus on the number. Again, I put those numbers in there because to me, based on, you know, looking at the growth of Woodbridge and looking at the fact that we haven't grown since 1990. Think about that.
Well, we're at about 96 or 9,700 people, so we've grown a little bit. But as towns grow, at some point they're going to max out. We're going to run out of land.
Okay, well,
So
we-
we're going to hit a number where we're not going to be able to grow beyond that.
Okay.
We're not that number yet, so we have some room for growth.
We have capacity to grow.
Yeah.
And this is a way of growing, and we could certainly accommodate 1,500 units, in my view. Again, this is my view, and we could talk about what number we want to write on it. But
Why don't we
it's
talk
not- it's
about
not
what
gonna
we
be-
think people, because the townspeople have to adopt this. They have to embrace this. And we can't force them to do this. So why don't we look at this from the perspective of the 9,600 or 700 people that live in the town saying, what do they want? And how can we find a common ground so where we can offer more housing opportunities and more diverse housing opportunities and have the townspeople support that rather than come at them and have them go, no way. And I've experienced that as well.
I don't think setting goals for units is gonna be something that people are gonna be upset about. I'm talking about 10-year goals.
Okay, we can disagree on that. I
Yeah,
think they will be
these-
upset.
these are-
I can.
You know, we're talking about that, that's like 50 affordable housing units, you know, for the affordable housing, 50, you know, a year. Is that like?
We've built
out-
30 in 35 years.
Right, but
And you
we-
want to build 50 a year for
Yes.
10 years. That's a dramatic difference.
Well, because we haven't been doing it.
I understand that.
Okay, so.
I'm just, look, in the end, this is going to go to TPZ, and then the townspeople are going to, they're going to decide
Yeah.
on this or not. I'm trying to help us be successful, okay? I know the reaction when there was a proposal for 3 two-unit condo complexes on Landon Street. 6 units, those are very small. The neighbors went crazy, they were so opposed to it because it was change. People are opposed to change.
I know, and the same
Until-
thing happened with 2 Orchard
un-
Street, but
Until you educate them and let them understand what they're doing. Now, if you go down Landon Street, I don't think anybody even realizes that there's condos there. They don't even know it. Even the neighbors don't realize it anymore. Has had no impact on the community. But it's educating people, and it's also incremental improvements to it, is what I'm thinking, is how we can be successful.
and my hope is that, surely we haven't reached enough people, but our experience as a committee has been when we do connect with people and sort of they begin to understand, most people just simply are unaware
Absolutely.
of the whole issue altogether. But once you start connecting with people and explaining that doing nothing is really not an option
Correct.
and getting their ideas, you feel you feel a change
Mhm.
in attitude. It's just been hard to reach a lot of people. I'm hoping we can do a better job with that.
When we did, we'll take the speed humps on Landon Street as an example. That took 9 years to get that done. It's a $15,000 project. It took 9 years. We had community meetings at the little restaurant, which is now closed, and brought the neighbors in and said, this is what we want to do, this is why we want to do it, what do you think? And people were asking questions like, well, is it going to damage my car? Is it going to do this? And no, it's not going to do any of those things. But it's going to slow the traffic down so the kids can ride their bikes on the road and not get hit by cars. That's what we did. 2030, we had community meetings at New England Brewing Company to talk about the streetscape plan that we want to do and the revitalization plan that we want to do. And there's multi-tiers to this plan. But the first part is literally streetscaping, slowing the traffic down, making it more walkable, making it safer for people to move around without getting hit by cars. We had community meetings for that, and there were people there that were resistant until you explain to them, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're going to do it, and this is the benefit we're going to get. And once we did that, they were on board with it. So I think we're going to be in that process in 2025 to go through the final design of that, and we'll have community meetings as well, and hopefully at the brewery, because they got a big tent outside, it holds a lot of people, and they can come down there and they can voice their opinions and they can disagree, and then they will come to a consensus, which is how we've been able to move projects forward.
Makes sense.
But we should do that. We should do that.
We are trying to do that. We have been doing it. We have been talking to a lot of people and.
On a large scale or small scale?
On a small scale.
Okay.
But we tried large scale at the JCC that time, and we didn't get a large
We
scale
only got
audience, but we
got
had the
about 30
capability.
Yeah.
people, but
Yeah.
it wasn't for lack of trying.
No, but 30
It was
people is
the- it was
actually
in-
not too bad.
It was
Yeah.
in the middle of the pandemic
And
also,
that's
I
really,
think.
that was really hard. That was
Yeah.
that's what slowed down 2030.
Yeah, and I think.
Slowed down a lot of projects.
Yeah.
And in terms of the POCD, I mean, even, and I discussed this on Monday, there's a lot of education that has to go on, even in terms of our zoning changes, because there were some, like,
There's one in here I didn't even know about. I did not know that we can have a 3-family unit in Woodbridge. I didn't know that.
that's.
Yeah, and that was in 2022, that was put in place?
That was passed in,
Yeah, I
that was
did.
the OCA lawsuit, no, I think it was 2021. That was
I
in
didn't know that.
2021,
So, yeah.
that you could have multifamily housing by special exception. You would have to come to,
But I didn't
everything,
know that. So,
that's, everything's by special exception.
yeah.
But yes, you can do that. Anyway, where were we?
My suggestion is incremental, your suggestion is to go in and maybe
Yeah, well,
people need to think
I
about
didn't
it.
think 1,500 was incremental.
1,500 is not incremental, I don't believe, so.
I mean, I didn't think it was, like crazy, you know, when I looked at the, you know, development that's gone over the years. I think it's what we need to really
Okay.
revitalize Woodbridge. And
I respect your
and it-
opinion,
and
and
it
I
would
disagree with it. I think that's not gonna fly in Woodbridge.
And I would agree. I've always opposed this idea of making it so incremental that we're putting grains of sand on a beach. That's not gonna work if you put a few houses above
Well, then
stores.
you think
But
about
we,
what-
but we do need to, you know, if you pick a number that's too high, and yes, that would be a great number if we got it, would solve all our problems, but it's just not gonna happen. It's gonna be too dramatic a change.
I don't know how you say it's not going to happen. I guess that's where I'm not, you know,
You have to get
If
the
you
support.
say- I'm talking
about
you have to get the
significant
support of
numbers,
the
though,
people.
which
if
is
you're
not
saying
that hard.
it's not
Have
gonna
to
happen,
support.
because it hasn't happened in the past
No,
30 years.
that's not it.
You know, because you stopped at 1990, you know, things are changing, and it may be, you know, that things are gonna push us to do this, you know, be it legislation, be it a lawsuit, that we're gonna have to do it. So
Well,
we
what we
should-
have to do at this point is to have an affordable housing plan, correct? That's all we are legally required to do today.
No, we're legally required to have, our statutes say that we're required to have housing that is affordable to people of a range of incomes.
That's
That-
the state statute says that we
That
must.
is the state statute that governs, that authorizes us to zone, and our zoning has incorporated that. So we have, it's a requirement, this is not optional,
But
it's
it's
a
not
requirement.
is there a percentage amount or a
No,
number?
there's no number
Okay.
as of yet, but,
Okay.
but that's when they talk about legislative reform.
Okay.
Based on a conference I went to,
Yep.
that is what they're talking about. So there is going to be a number at some point.
Right. And I'm agreeing, we do need to have a significant number, but if we make it too significant, if we get a good number in there and we show we're taking good faith efforts, we get a moratorium.
Yeah, we should get a
And-
moratorium, and that's.
But if you go too high, you're going to have everybody screaming about how you're changing we're making Woodbridge into New York City.
I don't see how, I think that's crazy. I don't, you know, there's plenty of towns that look like Woodbridge that have, you know, housing, higher density housing in different areas.
Oh, no, and I'm
That
not.
doesn't change the look,
We're
the
not
look.
disagreeing with that, but
I-
all we're
I-
saying is, if you make the change too dramatic, that's when the pushback comes. You have to do it in a reasonable fashion. If you change it, if you put a number of 1,500, it really does change Woodbridge significantly. It's gotta be a significant number. I mean, I know there are people who complain if we put 100 down, that it's too much, but we have to pick a realistic number and then do it incrementally.
I mean, just to get the moratorium, you're gonna need, you know,
Yep, we
you're
will.
gonna need a number.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's what we wanna go for, is a moratorium, so then you have like, 4 years before we can strategically, start planning it as to where we wanna do housing. At least you have some breathing room, because right now, you could have a 8-30G come in, and.
You could have a developer come in and make a zoning application and build affordable housing, and you
Right.
can't, we totally understand that.
Yeah.
If there was more information on how people that own 2-unit houses can receive, how they can do a deed restriction, what the advantages to the deed restriction are, that would be incredibly helpful information. Because we talk about that, if the home is deed restricted, it counts as affordable.
Right.
Okay, but where's that information? Can we have that information so that if someone asks the question, we can just say, here?
Well, it's not that, you have to actually go through and create a program to do that.
Who does?
The
The
town.
town has to do that.
Right,
Okay.
the town.
So the town hasn't even started that process.
No, the town hasn't started that. I mean, these are recommendations that we have brought forth. We're finally getting some help here. We have a planner.
Thankfully, we have a plan, which is good.
We have DOH now is helping. We have Scribe that's helping. So we are taking advantage of all the resources. But certainly one of my recommendations was for the town to apply for home program to have just like that, because I did this in Bridgeport. We had home,
Bless you.
and, because we're a small town, we have to go through the state, but in Bridgeport, we had our own entitlements of a home program, and we incentivized, owners of multifamily housing, if, they're owner occupied, if they created, the units, to be affordable, you give them a development subsidy to fix up the units, and then you put a deed restriction on there for whatever the subsidy is, be it 10, 20 years. And then that counts for that time on the appeals list, because now there is a mortgage instrument which serves as a deed restriction on there.
In order to do that in Woodbridge, we would have to create some sort of
You have to have a
legislation, a program.
No, you
Program.
just, you
Okay.
could apply for home funding to create a, incentive to create, rental properties. I mean, we could come up with a name of it.
Okay.
There's plenty, there's towns that do it. I could probably pull something from a town that has that. And yes, that is something.
But to me, that's
to do.
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I
If
agree.
you've got people
I
that
agree.
own property.
That's not gonna get us to our numbers.
No.
But
We're
it's just-
not gonna get to our numbers in one spot. We can get to our numbers in lots of different ways.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so if you've got 30 on Lucy Street, and we've got 30 more in the rest of the flats because we've got property owners that want to do that and have an incentive to do that, and you get 30 more and 30 more and 30 more, now we're moving towards a number. Right? And I think, to me, that's a good way to go. That's a good way to go. You already have existing properties that you can deed restrict with the right incentives, then we're not building any more properties. Well, we're building fewer properties. You already have the properties.
You would be okay with desegregating all the low-income housing in one area as opposed?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay.
We need to set up a mechanism so that if someone wants to do that, they can. Right?
Right, and I'm just saying that's not going to bring us to the number that we need. I agree that this is something we should be doing. I mean,
Yes, but it gets us closer
yeah,
to that number.
I think we're saying they're probably like,
We're saying the same thing, but I'm not gonna say that we should require it for all the houses, or it should be done for all the houses, because they're all owned by different people. People should be able to decide what they wanna do with their house. So I wanna deed restrict it for this incentive, or I choose not to deed restrict it because I don't want that incentive. That should be their choice as a property owner. So I would look at it and say, do I feel like this is a good move for me, yes or no? Or then my neighbor might say the same thing, yes or no. We might have different opinions on that, but that can move the needle. And other things like that could move the needle.
right, it can move the needle, but
Yes.
it's not.
Chris,
gonna-
are there many two-family houses in the flats? There are.
There's a couple hundred. I would
Oh,
say at
really?
least a couple hundred.
Really?
Sure.
Okay, I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But the concern, as Kathy said, is not flip-flop, but, we can't do it all in one area, because that'll be a
No, of
loss.
course not.
Of course, I wouldn't want
Yeah, we
I wouldn't
couldn't
want
do
any
that.
of this done in one area. If we can spread out housing in different places, it minimizes the impact in terms of traffic, which is something I've been dealing with for a long time in town. And, don't put all the problems in one area, or all the density in one area, because you have traffic issues. If you spread it out over different areas, that minimizes one big traffic issue, if you spread it out.
But where else is there that kind of land? I hear what you're saying in the
Yep.
flats, I think that's a great
I-
idea, but there's the country club, and then what else in terms of, higher density? Like-
Okay, that's a great question. I think at some point we should take a map and sit down at a map and look at where water and sewer lines are and say, this is a piece of property that's potential, this one's a piece of property that's potential, this one's a piece of property that's potential. I don't know where all the water sewer lines go. So I think if we can do that,
Oh, yeah,
that would
we-
be good exercise for the committee to do, is to
Well,
sit down and do
we've been
that.
trying to get somebody in from the Water Pollution Control Authority to help us, figure that out. But SCROG is supposed to be helping us with that, doing an analysis as to where would be the most optimal optimal place to be able to expand, because, you know, some places wouldn't make sense, some places wouldn't make sense. But certainly just understanding how far the sewer and the water goes, and where you could expand to, and what properties within that, would that open up to. Certainly when you go up Center Road, you have a lot of church property there.
There's church property that's
Yeah.
underutilized at this point. If there's the opportunity to connect water and sewer to a church property or a town property or a private property, then that might be another way to get closer to this number. But
Okay. Let's see, where?
I like the oversized parking lots at churches and synagogues, they're, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. It was 82 degrees today, and it's November 6th. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. We can't deny that it's getting warmer. The climate is changing. If we build on all our green space, it doesn't benefit us from a climate standpoint. If we can utilize spaces that are already paved, they are already impacted. So if we took a paved parking lot and built on it, it doesn't impact our climate the same way tearing up green space and paving over green space does. To me, this is kind of a logical thing. So let's look at those things first. Let's look at those parcels first. I mean, I think there's something, again, I'm gonna get in trouble if I say this, but there's some churches and other places like that in town that have excess space that might be interested in doing
Well,
it.
they might, and I know there's some, you know, I hear that there's some, you know, faith-based organizations that may be I think you told me might be downsizing or, yeah, so there might be,
Yeah.
and I think even the JCC, there was a piece of property, I think in their parking lot, they had identified a piece of, you know, property that they would look at, because that's all, you know, that would be,
Yeah.
connect to public water, you know, so that could be a space, so it's just really, you know, investigating those spaces too. So we do have different areas that we consider for housing, and I don't think.
I only know about one synagogue, and that's in Orange, not here. But we have a shortage of parking, and we'd develop more parking if we could, but it's wetlands. And we have a funeral tomorrow there, and
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out, it's probably gonna be a lot of people, we're trying to figure out how we're gonna park all the cars there. I'm not saying that's the same here in Woodbridge, I have no idea.
And just going over some of your comments, you know, we develop housing would increase the mill rate of our town. You know, we listened to the different towns that talked about their developments. They see their housing developments as their economic drivers that brings into revenues and you know, and again, we're probably gonna go through another debate, but this is, and I could set, and I know you haven't been around this table for the past 4 years, where we had talked to different towns, and they talk about the revenues that these developments have brought in, and how it hasn't had an impact on their school system. There was an article about Trumbull. Trumbull has created a lot of apartments, and
I look around and I see apartments being built all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, they're building Shelton and Milford
Yeah.
and Trumbull, I mean, all over. And I wonder about, in Orange, and I wonder about the economic impact negatively and positively. And I think maybe a valuable thing would be to talk to some of the first selectmen or mayors of these communities and get a sense of, you know, let them do it first. And let us take a look and say, that worked, that didn't work, that didn't work.
well, I'll
and
send
use
you
that.
an article, because they did that in Trumbull, and they talked about that, and so
So when I say this, I mean, we should be cognizant of it. I'm not saying we can't do it because it won't work. I'm saying we just need to be cognizant of these things.
Okay,
It's important.
Right, well, we certainly aren't gonna do anything that's gonna have a negative effect on Woodbridge. And certainly we're going to, any developments going to be in compliance with the Quinnipiac Valley District.
Yep.
That's
Well,
goes without saying.
we had a proposal years ago, zoning board of appeals, where a person wanted to build a housing development with the houses closer together, more open space, and a communal septic system. And in theory, it sounded like a good idea until we started to ask some more questions, and this really was somewhat untested. And I said, well, what would happen if 30 years from now their septic system failed, and you've got 15 houses? Would the town be responsible for maintaining them? And there was a lot of questions about that. Who would be responsible for maintaining them? Because it wasn't really like a condo association. So that's why I put that in there, because we've had
Well,
that
there's
issue
been a
before.
lot of advances in,
Yep.
septic
And that's great. I just don't want to be the
And-
first one to do that.
Well, I mean, they had Aaron Hoffman, I don't even know Aaron Hoffman, who's a planning and zoning, he's on the commission with me, and he works for a nonprofit developer, and he was here, and he talked about like his developments in Guilford, they have 40 units on a septic system, and,
Are they privately owned?
no,
Publicly owned.
it's their development.
Okay, it's a public, owned by the town?
Right.
Okay,
Well, no, it's owned by the development company.
by the nonprofit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it could be done.
Okay.
Yeah, the town's not gonna. It's not gonna. But certainly, we have talked about, time to time, oversized parking lots, churches. It's reaching out and talking to them. And I know some people that have been trying to do that. But it's a matter of, the town's gotta be willing, welcoming to create the environment to say, hey, would you be interested in this? This is what we're looking at doing, having somebody, and maybe, who's good at doing this? Because we brought Lisk in, at one point. And they do work with faith-based organizations for, developing housing and community space, because there's some congregations are just losing their flock, they're not as busy and they're looking for other ways to be able to promote their mission, in a different way, and they found that affordable housing and or housing for people who are developmentally disabled. I mean, that's another piece. We have a need for that, and I have to get it. And that was something that was brought up at the DOH conference, because we have a population of people that have developmental disabilities that are in need of housing, or they're aging with their older parents, and they need, they certainly, I mean, there's other, housing choices in New Haven, be it Chapel Haven, but it would be nice if families could be able to stay in Woodbridge and not, given a choice. So, I think that's a particular number I do want to get for Woodbridge. And that should be something I feel that should be built into the POCD, because I think that is housing that should be prioritized as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Bridge. Yeah, so some of this, I think we're saying things the same way in.
Yep. I'm just looking for, you have to think about this. You've been doing this now for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I'm new, okay? But I've also been involved in the town for a long time. Most people are not involved, and they don't know any of this. And it's our job to educate people on why this is important, what's important, and how we can do this, and how we can do this in a way that's going to make a positive impact on our town. So, and that's why I'm being diligent on numbers, because if we give people false information, they're not dumb. They're smart people in this town. They're going to know. They're going to.
What's
I'm just
false?
saying. I'm hypothetically. If we give people information that's inaccurate or not correct, they're going to figure it out and they're going to be opposed to this. And I don't want them to be opposed to this. I want them to be in favor of this.
Yeah,
I want them to be in favor of us diversifying our housing stock, adding affordable housing, adding housing for seniors, adding housing for people with disabilities. These are really important things, okay? But we've got to do this right, dead on right, because we're going to meet resistance, because people don't like change. I just feel like people don't like change.
Right, well, Chris, in all due respect, I think we've been trying to do this right. You know, we have brought in a lot of resources, I've given out a lot of information. I
okay.
plaster things
Okay.
all
And
over the
I'm gonna
place.
challenge you to keep doing it right.
Yeah, so
Okay?
I don't.
Because it's so important. It's
Yeah.
so important. It's so important to get this
Okay.
right.
Well,
Okay?
well, I appreciate you keeping me on task for
Yeah.
making sure my information is right. But I do put a lot of stuff out there for people.
You do put a lot of stuff. You do.
And there's different ways. This is a multifaceted approach. This is not just delegating it to one piece of property. There are, but I just think there's, you know, we have to look at all different ways to do this. And we're saying the same thing.
Yep.
I think our only area where we differ is the Woodbridge Country Club. But again, our plan was never just to do that. It's to do that because it needs to be done, particularly with, you know, in the areas where there was previous development. And again, there's ways of doing that where you are preserving, you're blending in the open space. And I just think that could be a really nice, beautiful neighborhood that could be created there with a nice, beautiful recreation and open space for the community. I think you could have, you know, I think it could serve all purposes. But yes, these are all different approaches, which, you know, we have talked about
Mhm.
many times.
Yep.
And I think a lot of this is actually in here. And it, you know, and maybe it's just incorporating it a little bit more based on your input. So, you know, in terms of oversized parking lots, I guess we could, you know, I didn't have a chance to incorporate
Mhm.
your comments in here. But
I mean,
certainly.
I think that, you know, there's more discussion to have. I kind of would like to hear what other people have to say too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
thank you for
I'm
doing
sorry,
this.
yeah,
This is-
but I'd like-
It's good for us to be thinking this through very carefully. I'm wondering, in our original housing report, when we talked about the country club, did we talk about preserving a good part of it for open space? Or did all those discussions come
We-
after our report?
Yeah, we didn't name, well, we had the country club there in terms of the different site selections, potential site selections. We didn't have any exact reference to the
Right.
country club. We just, we did reference it by describing the characteristics of it, by saying something to the effect that the town should use, you know, town-owned property that has, you know, the potential for high-density housing, to do that. And of course, that's the only piece of property that they have is, you know, the country club.
There.
But we did talk about, you know, doing it in a manner that complements open space, you know, environmental impact. It's high density housing. Because high density housing is environmentally friendly because you're using less land.
You're using less land.
The key is to use as little untouched land as possible, and I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's certainly consistent with the state's POCD of using land that has existing infrastructure, using land that's brownfield. So it checks all the boxes of what the state POCD would say about using that piece of property for housing.
So you talked about maps, that would be, are there maps that
I couldn't find a map online that would be
helpful?
printable large enough to take it and really kind of draw it out and say, this is accessible here, this is accessible there. I
Well,
couldn't
we have
find it.
SCROG do that.
Yeah.
You know, SCROG is there to help the towns,
Yeah.
and we had somebody here that was doing mapping, and she was doing
Yeah.
more specific Woodbridge mapping, and maybe I could have her do something like that, and that would be helpful.
I mean, a map of our water and sewer shouldn't be difficult to find.
Yeah, no, she, in
And
fact, she.
and if we could get that, then we could sit down and maybe at the next meeting, look at that and say,
Yeah.
well, here's a parcel that might work, this parcel might work. Maybe if you extend the water line or sewer line or both.
She actually did that, where
Yeah,
she
we could look at
extended,
that.
that's in the regional plan, but
It
she
is.
actually took that and blew it up. Yeah, they have a map of Woodbridge with the, public infrastructure and extended it, like, they really, look, did you look
I
at
did
that?
see that. It's incredibly difficult to read that.
Yeah, well,
It's
it's
colored,
small,
it's
yeah.
all colors, yellows and oranges and reds, and I was trying to look at that, I was just having a really hard time.
Yeah, well, she.
If we could have it just simple map,
She was working
with the
on,
streets,
she was
yeah.
working on, just doing it for Woodbridge, so,
yeah.
Didn't we give out a blown-up version of that JCC meeting?
Dominic, had an intern color in
Yeah.
the,
Oh, yeah.
that got a little, but it was a good exercise. I think that's even on our housing committee, screen, anyway,
I
okay.
think so.
All right, so let's get into, let me see.
We have to have our comments in by the end of December.
No, well,
Yes.
we have to have a report in, I'd like to do that really beforehand.
So we have one more meeting before the end of December.
Yes, yes, we can have a special meeting.
But we have a special meeting.
We can
a
have
special
it,
meeting.
right? We can have a special meeting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and we wanted to work on this some more, and, because this
Yeah.
is a lot,
Yeah,
and,
that would be
Yeah.
good.
yeah. All right, so and we talked about this was in our plan about, bringing in, informing people about different programs and subsidies that could, promote, affordable housing. Certainly, now that we have Ben Lovejoy, working with different towns for doing this, I could try to get him in here. And, cause that would be good, cause I've been trying to do that, with the town. But, the problem with the town is that they don't have a lot of capacity to run these types of programs. I was trying to,
You mean a community help program? What type of program do you mean?
like a housing department or,
Oh, yeah.
we don't have a housing department.
No.
We don't have somebody who could actually run this type of program. Because it takes, Warner could talk about that. I mean, Warner I used to work for Warner in the city of Bridgeport, and we ran, you did the lead abatement, so he ran that program, but it takes staffing to run these types of
Sure.
programs, and, the problem is, it sounds great, but you have to factor in the capacity to do that, and,
Mhm.
How do you do that? Maybe it's hiring, a nonprofit to do that for you, and you start, so it just takes a lot of thought behind that, because typically, when we worked at City of Bridgeport, you had the whole program, we had staff in there that was monitoring, doing the development, going out there, making sure, looking at the, AI forums, and making sure they did, whatever they were supposed to be doing for that schedule of the development.
What about the planner that we hired? Will he be meeting with all the different committees and commissions that have anything at all to do with housing?
Oh, for the town planner.
Our
Yeah,
town planner.
he is supposed to be, meeting with us at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But, that hasn't been planned.
Yeah,
That hasn't been
okay.
scheduled yet, but yeah.
The challenging thing is the time frame on this is crunched. To get all this done, you need to get the plan of conservation and development done by May or June, is that correct?
Yeah, but this is, again, this is stuff that's in a housing plan,
So this,
So
this
I-
part of it,
This is getting into the weeds, this is getting into the mechanics, operationalizing. This is not stuff that's gonna go in the
it's
POC.
not necessarily going to the POC.
Yeah, this is gonna be you know, again, a link to the affordable housing plan. And in the affordable housing plan, you know, and I'm sure you read it, it
Mhm.
talks about doing this. But you're talking about,
But we're talking about right now.
you're talking
We're talking
about,
about what's going into the plan of conservation development.
right.
Which, that's what I'm saying, it's time crunched because that's gotta be done by May or
Yeah.
June of 2025. So, yeah, I think meeting with the planner would be excellent if you could
Yeah,
come
no,
and meet with us.
believe you me,
Yeah.
I've been trying to get a meeting with the planner. Yeah, because he could probably guide us as to, you know, what
I
should
would
and
think,
what.
yeah.
You know, this is, some of this stuff is, you know, some of this stuff is in the weeds, but I think there's a way of just, you know, kind of summarizing this in terms of, you know, different strategies. I think talking about, you know, getting, you know, creating a program. I think this is by saying we want to create a program, creating a program and it's going to promote, you know, property owners the ability to be able to create, if they have if they have a multi-unit or a duplex, that give them the ability to make one of the units affordable. I think just kind of a broad, you know, overview like that would suffice for the POCD, and then we have to operationalize how are you going to do that, and that's when you start figuring out who's going to do that. Because I don't think it's going to be town staff doing that, I can tell you that. But
Probably, well, probably not.
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge.
All right. So let's just quickly go through the 10-year housing goals. So increase housing diversity by 25%. I'm not even sure how that is calculated. Again, some of this was kind of generated, and I was trying to kind of massage what does make sense. So this is from my initial, you know, AI chat I had with somebody. But the idea is, you know, amending the zoning regulations to add greater housing diversity by enabling multifamily and higher density housing in designated areas. So there's more areas where we can have multifamily housing. And then the amounts, setting an amount, developing 500 affordable housing and 1,000 market rate units by 2034. And I was just, you know, 500 affordable housing units. You know, I'm thinking that they may, you know, if Fair Share ever gets passed in the next 10 years, they're talking about like 1,400 like affordable housing units. I think 500 is a decent number, and that's why I think 500 is more reasonable.
I mean, I disagree, but it's
Yeah.
okay that we're gonna disagree. We'll
And
just disagree.
and 1,000 market rate, you know, a lot of these developments are probably going to be like 80-20, you know, 85-15, you know, so you're gonna, to get to the affordable housing, units, you know, you're building market rates to help pay for if there's no public subsidies involved, then you're building the market rates to offset the cost of the affordable housing units. So that's what I was thinking in terms of how are we able to get to this amount? Let's see. update the affordable housing requirement in the current opportunity housing zoning regulation to ensure the promotion of housing. And what I'm saying there is determining the optimal balance there. Right now, we have 80-20, and, since we passed that like 3 years ago, we haven't had any developments.
So it's 20% affordable.
20% affordable.
Affordable.
Of which 10% is at 60% AMI and 10% is at 80% AMI. And, in towns across Connecticut, a lot of them are tweaking that because they find that 20% is too high, it doesn't work. And so we have an application, if you're following planning and zoning, this application to actually tweak that, to make it 12%. And I think it might be 6%, at the 60% and 6% at 80%. So it's and some towns are actually making it like higher, where they had it at 10, now they're raising it to 14. So it's really tweaking it based on what works in Woodbridge and what is the good percentage of how to create the most optimal recipe for getting developers interested in creating affordable housing using by doing it through a market rate type development. Reducing minimum lot sizes in designated areas, and I think I spoke about this because they historically the zoning has been based on some like an outdated report from DEEP that said you have to have 1.5 acres because of septic systems. But also in that same report, they said if you had access to water, you just needed a 1/2 acre. But Woodbridge didn't tie itself to that. So there is areas where you probably could reduce the acre.
Isn't the minimum lot size 1.5 acres, not 2?
1.5 acres.
Yeah, it's in some areas,
Well,
I think
some
it's
areas
2
it was-
when it's a watershed,
Yeah.
but I think in general, it's 1.5
1.5,
acres.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm confused by that too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Should we just say reduce
yeah,
it,
1.5.
whatever it is, you reduce it to
Yeah.
0.75?
There's one small area in Woodbridge where it's a 1/2 acre with well and septic. And it's behind Brookside Farm Market, that road, that neighborhood
yeah.
up there, Main Street, North Avenue, Burma Road. And there are challenges to their wells because of that. It's a challenging neighborhood. They really need either water, they probably need city water up there because
Yeah, no, I mean, don't they have city?
no, they have no city water or sewer. Past the Linden, is it? That changes its
yeah.
name. Yeah,
I
past
think
that, there's no water past that. So, yeah, the people up there have had issues with their wells
Yeah.
being contaminated.
That should, I don't see why that can't be extended. Encouraging transit-oriented development, leveraging state and federal housing grants, and this is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Aggressively pursuing state federal opportunities for infrastructure projects, road improvements, and then engaging the public and forming regional housing partnerships. So continuing, constantly continuing to try to educate folks about what we could do for housing, particularly if people still don't know the zoning regulations, we're trying to get people familiar with ADUs and the fact that you can have a 2-unit throughout Woodbridge. Maybe it's a workshop, maybe we just have a workshop and we start brainstorming, we bring DOH, we bring Chaffin, we bring, nonprofit developers, and then we have one big workshop where we start talking about different possibilities.
With us, or you mean with people in the town who can be
People-
asking
people in-
questions?
Well, we could certainly be there, but have people come in, or people that might have property, or might wanna reconfigure their property, or might wanna tear down what they have and build something else, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
if you have something that's,
Sure, that would be
Yeah.
excellent, I think.
yeah, cause it might, you know, if you could like build a 3-unit where you have like a single family, you know, that could be profitable for somebody. So it's those kinds of, you know, just getting the information out that this is something that you're able to do if in fact people aren't aware of the zoning regulations that have changed. And I think, again, the zoning regulations need to be, I think, out there more in terms of educating.
Mhm.
I think Chris made some good points here, probably to bridge the gap between, these are valid comments other people may have, and try to bridge the gap between what we're recommending and addressing some of these concerns. But I think we're too focused on private property owners. I don't think there's the cost of developing, I don't think we can, if we're gonna address housing concerns, you have to focus on the stuff we can control, like townhome properties. And that's probably should be the main focus. Can't rely on private property owners to maybe the church, maybe this person, you can do this, and the cost of developing and recouping those costs is almost, the average person won't know how to make probably a bad financial decision. So I think the focus should be on what we can control.
No, I agree, and that's why we kind of.
The other stuff is, maybe if you want to type
Yeah,
of stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that's-
But
Kathy, what do we need for moratorium? I don't remember the number that,
Yeah, it's, you need 75 housing equivalent units. Now you might ask, well, what is that? And I think Chris printed it out.
It's in here somewhere.
Yeah.
it's okay, I can look it up when I get home.
Yeah, so, I don't have it with me, but,
Yeah.
so it depends on how you target it. Like, for instance, and it depends if you're, targeting for a particular population versus, anybody, families, okay? Depends if you're targeting, like 80%, you even get points for fear, if you.
Oh, that's right. I
For
forgot.
me, for fair market rents, you get like a quarter of a point, If you're targeting for seniors, I think you just get a half a point. If you're targeting for,
I think
you have
that
to,
might be what you're looking for.
yeah. So those are different
Right,
points.
it's got the point system there.
Yeah.
So those points, depending on the configuration of what you're doing, has to add up to 75 points.
I see.
And that gives you a moratorium, what is it, for a certain period of time?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
By the way, you did a very good job, aside from the numbers, I think it's an excellent starting point.
Yeah, and if there's anything else you think that should be added to this, again, I'm just.
We have criticism, but I guess we're gonna discuss, well, maybe you're not gonna.
Well, no, we discussed, Chris,
Right.
we were talking about, I'm gonna try to take some of what Chris had and incorporate it, because we had talked about, I actually skipped over this, and this is actually a Chris question. Expand and revitalize the business district with mixed-use zoning. Update the zoning framework in the business district to allow for mixed-use development which combine residential, retail, and commercial uses. This goal is to facilitate the construction of
Thank
at
you,
least.
Chris.
Now, Chris, I had 200 new residential units within the business district, creating a vibrant, walkable area that supports local businesses and reduces the town's tax burden. Now, I know you have plans for, that area. Did you come up with how many residential units you're looking to develop?
We didn't, because we're doing this, the first step is going to be the traffic and streetscaping, the next step would be how we're gonna enhance in terms of adding housing units, adding more businesses. I've been thinking about this too, and I have a problem, okay? I own a commercial property in the flats, so I don't feel like I should be part of that specific part of the conversation on mixed-use housing, because I have an inherent conflict. I would benefit. So when we get to that point, I'll take a walk, okay? Because, and I sent this to Stephanie Charleglio today so she understands this, the town clerk. And I'm gonna have the same issue with 2030. We haven't really had that conversation, but I don't feel comfortable talking about changing the zone where I will benefit. So just letting you know as we do this going forward.
Yeah,
I may just say, hey, I'm gonna take a walk while you're talking about that. If you're talking about, commercial development or, added commercial development in certain areas, that maybe I could sit in on it. But when you talk about changing the zoning down there to make it mixed use, I just wanna make sure that everybody understands I'm not trying to do this for my benefit, so I'll step away from it, Then we'll come back when
I
you're
would
done.
maybe just ask the town attorney whether or not he thinks it's a conflict.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. But, again, we gotta do it.
What I should have done was 2 years ago, when I bought the building, went to town plan and zoning and asked them to change the zone. Then I wouldn't have had to worry about it, but I didn't do that. I ran out of time.
Now, that's Dev 1?
It's in general business, but it's not the part of general business which has mixed use. The zoning down there is very complicated. There's so many different zones, literally so many different little pieces down there of zoning. It's really challenging. So
you're in GB.
I believe that building is general business. It is directly adjacent to what was the old Residence C, which was a two-family.
Isn't there houses next to you?
Exactly adjacent to it is a two-family house. It's actually a one-family house, but it's zoned as a two-family property.
So then what zone is that in?
You have new zone names. It was Residence C. It's now.
Oh, that's
you have new
Residence
names.
C.
Yes, and across the street is Residence C, and then across the street this way is a bank, which is, I believe, general business. And then across Amity Road, I believe TPZ changed the zone there, so that is a different new zone with the ability to put mixed use. So it's complicated. It's gonna get worked out because,
Yeah.
to me, it just makes sense, but it just, in the
Yeah, well, I
process.
think-
I just don't want anybody to say, oh, he's on that board because he wants to get his property zone changed. That's not my goal. If it happens, it happens, it's not my goal. So when we get to that point in the discussion in the next couple of months, I'll
Yeah, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
hypothetically,
yeah.
if there was a business similar to your business, how many units would you be able to get on that?
Hypothetically speaking, 3 on the second floor,
Yeah, okay.
because it's 2,000 square feet, and I think the maximum is like 600 square feet per unit right now.
You have a second floor? up there?
Yes, yep. There's 2 businesses up there right now.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Can't picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why you just can't ask for a zoning change.
I could have done that, but now I'm kind of in the middle of this, and it would look really bad if I did, so I'm just gonna, Wait.
All right.
like
No,
I said, it was my intention to do that, just, for future use if I decided to go that route, and I just have run out of time.
I think we need but here's the thing, you got stuff going on. I mean, I would like to have the planner go in and just
Yeah.
come up with recommended zoning changes, but then I don't know if through your planning process, whether or not you also have recommended zoning changes. And then I don't know what the best recommended zoning changes are. The way our opportunity housing, reads right now, anything like over 2 units, like 3 units or more would have to have an affordability element to it. I think that number's too low. I think that should start like at 10 units, because that would discourage people that may wanna do it, but that can't underwrite, the third affordable unit, because it just probably wouldn't pencil out.
But that could tie into an incentive. If there's an incentive to do
Right,
that.
yeah.
And that's why I'm really harping on, what are these incentives? What are they, how do they work, how long are they? Because I don't know what any of that is. I hear about it and I read about it. Well, there's a 10-year thing, or it could be 40 years, but I need to see it. As a business owner, you want to see it. And you want to sit down as a business owner and say, I own a property, this is the highest, best use. If I do this, I'll get an incentive, and that will equal this. So I'll do that, because it's better for the town. And that's where we're gonna be at with that. That's where you're gonna get with property owners down there. They're gonna say, how can I do this and make it economically feasible for me?
Yeah, well, we gotta, I think for that, business district, we have to,
Yeah.
and I don't, do you think it's something where we could like meet with the planner and talk about proposed zoning, or do you think you have to wait until that goes through your process?
Our process?
Yeah.
No, I think you can do that.
Do the housing piece while you're doing your piece?
Well, our piece is, yes, what we're gonna do is essentially road and sidewalk. So it's not gonna impact the properties themselves, it's just road and sidewalk.
All right,
It's-
so you weren't going, I thought for some reason you had a housing element to it.
One of the next phase of what we're gonna do is, for 2030, is going to be looking at potential zone changes for mixed use.
Right, right.
Other uses of property. So
Right.
maybe mixed use are changing the use entirely, and that's where, and we just started talking about that, which is why we'll, at our next meeting, talk about the fact that, I will step out of that part of it, because I don't want to appear like there's a conflict. But that will be part of 2030. So that ties into kind of what we're doing here.
Right, so I don't
And
wanna have like silo conversations.
No,
And actually,
exactly.
I would rather that you not step out, because you would be able to be a liaison between 2030 and this housing committee. So, we're working together and not doing separate
Yeah.
things, so.
I guess I'm a bit lost, cause what's our charge as a committee? We don't get into the nitty-gritty of numbers and incentives, and we're just making simple recommendations.
It's promoting housing.
Yeah.
We're not building programs, and it's
I
a
put it
lot
there 'cause I
more work
forget.
than just sitting here talking.
Now, well, we're not doing we're not implementing the programs, but we're bringing the program
Make suggestions,
and,
but do not,
not what?
I see here where Chris is saying, we all need to know exactly what the financial incentive is and what are the potential grants and federal funds.
Yeah, that is a,
And that's,
We don't have that exact number. We're not gonna look for that.
I think that I'm thinking more towards, that would be something that in the plan of conservation and development, or more TPZ oriented.
Not this
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, there's a
Well-
little bit of this is,
no, actually, I do
That-
see
yeah.
that as bringing, because that is in our plan where we talk about bringing in developer subsidies or subsidies for, owners that wanna like create affordable housing units and being able to actually get a subsidy in so they could have, create affordable housing units. So that, I think bringing those resources in, we're not gonna be implementing the program, but making those resources known and available and let people know that this is doable so they could
Okay, makes
have
sense.
access to it.
Makes sense, okay.
But we're not gonna be the ones running the
Yeah,
program.
I just get a
Yeah.
little nervous because, I would rather us not use numbers, cause you start using numbers and then it's not,
Oh, in
accurate.
terms
We
of
just should
the
avoid-
program numbers, yeah, no,
I
no,
think
no,
the
no,
issue
no,
is
no, yeah.
obvious, we should just avoid,
Yeah, yeah.
there's no need to get into numbers.
Yeah, no,
I'll see
that
what-
would be something that's worked out with, when the program's worked out between DOH and the
Right.
town, that's where that comes in, but we wouldn't be coming up with numbers
Yeah, we
in
don't wanna be
terms.
tied down to
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
1%,
there's-
2%, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but there's kinda like benchmarks for that, and, I had my might benchmark, you know, our numbers in terms of,
As long as people
you
know
know,
it's
the
a
type of, you know,
benchmark and
for
it's not
a subsidy, you know.
1.5%, 0.5, no, it's 2%, 1.5.
I agree, it does get challenging
What are you talking
because the educational part of it with people, it's like, how do we
Right.
get them to understand the difference and it's,
And
this is a
it's
challenging
complicated.
topic.
Well, affordable
Yeah.
housing is very, very
Yeah.
complicated, I could tell you that, right, Warner?
No, the point is, right, so if it's 1% of housing, right, so if it's not 1%, it's 0.9, who cares?
Yeah.
It's low, it's
Yeah.
1%.
Yeah, yeah,
It's, the margin of error is what?
yeah, yeah, no,
What are we arguing about?
no, you're right.
Good point.
Okay, so, I think we reviewed this, enough tonight. Is there any other thoughts or questions? Because I would recommend, now that we kinda previewed this, if it could be, if you could start looking at it and adding in what should be, you think should be added in terms of a POCD. Again, I would invite people to like look at the our current POCD and see how they laid it out.
Mhm.
And then see how we could, you know, and you will see it's, you know, it's kind of a general guideline as to how you're gonna create more housing. They don't even get into this specifics, and this may be even like too much specifics for the POCD, but I think, you know, give them the information, they can decide what they wanna take or what they wanna like hyperlink in terms
Mhm.
of our plan.
Yeah,
But-
because ultimately, the TPZ, Town Plan and Zoning, will take what we send them and use what they want, right? They could say, well, we'll use this part, and we'll not use that part, correct? They could do that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
their, you know,
It's their prerogative. Your
It's-
Town Plan and Zoning Commission's prerogative to use what information they want that we give them. They can say, well, we're not gonna use this part of it, but we'll use these other parts.
So that's why I think there's no conflict of interest with you, because you got those, you're not making a decision on zoning. You're not influencing any decision, you're just making a recommendation.
Okay, I mean, I'll think about that, but I appreciate that. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah.
yeah. And I can tell you, they don't really wear a planning hat too much, so.
I know. Well, now they've got help with a planner, they can, because we used to have a planner,
Yeah,
and, you know,
Hey, you may make a recommendation, and say, we don't care about it.
okay.
Yeah,
No, I
I-
appreciate that, thinking that way.
they, yeah, I mean, I got on planning and zoning because my area is planning.
Mhm.
I'm not, you know,
So,
not much
yeah.
zoning, but,
Mhm.
you know, I worked on POCDs, I worked on SEDS, I worked on, you know, housing plans, I worked on, you know, any plan throughout, you know, for a town or a state, I worked on, and so I was excited about doing the planning aspect of it. Not so much the zoning, and all they do is zoning. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. So if folks could just look at this and go through it, carefully and make recommendations. Ideally, if you could send it to me and I can file this before the next meeting. And I will, in the meantime, you know, there's some of, you know, Chris's information that kind of blends into these different
Yep.
goals that we set out. I'll put that in there and we'll take it from there in terms of what, you know, number we end up with. But I think we should set a, you know, a housing goal, because I think we need to, you know, say that this is what we aspire to do. And with that, I think we do have last thing on the agenda, which is furthering community conversations. And I know, Lou, you had a meeting at your house furthering community.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. So it's hard to characterize exactly what we're doing, promoting, community conversations, community organizing. not specifically centered on housing, but it comes up, of course, it comes up all the time. And last time, poor Karen walked in just as Lou's wife, we were doing story, the story circle. And just as she walks in, it's like, okay, your turn to give a story without even 2 seconds notice, which was just cruel and unusual punishment, I think. But so we didn't really accomplish anything more than connecting and telling some personal stories. But it is, we have Kathy from Human Services. I mean, it's a good vehicle for getting different people to connect and talk to each other, and my angst is always wanting to sort of make it revolve around housing, but I'm not the leader, and it's not the mission.
And Ben wasn't there at this one. And, at the previous meeting, somebody actually, Dave, walked in just like that.
Yeah.
All this housing material, but this one wasn't really, this was more storytelling. The next meeting, which I won't be at, which is
At Kathy's
20th, it'll be
house.
at Kathy and Tim's house, actually.
Okay,
And I'm sure housing will come up there.
yeah.
Well, it's also supposed to be a plan of action. It's supposed to be the next meeting.
Yeah.
Now, is Jen, doing it?
Jen led the meeting,
Okay,
and I don't know. I'm trying to just be open-minded about the whole thing. Anytime people are talking to one another, that's a good thing. But my frustration comes from the fact that we've been talking for many years about this issue, and I'm just so anxious to see things actually move forward.
Yep, you're much more tactful than my wife is. We're on camera still or not? No. Who said basically, we're just going in circles here. She said, she didn't quite understand the concept.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel your pain. So I don't go to these meetings anymore now. But,
Yeah, thank you guys for doing that. It's hard to get. How many
Yeah.
people do you get?
There must have been 9 there, but there were more the prior meeting at your house,
Yes.
I think, had more people.
it
And
depends
I had
on-
one meeting at my house with quite a number of people, but,
And there are people who come to most meetings, but they miss one, and there were a couple of people that usually are there. Actually, 3 or 4 that weren't there this past week. Or this last meeting, I should say, not this week.
And there have been people who have come to past meetings and said, tell me when you actually have an action plan. I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll help and I'll work, but I
Right,
need to
right.
know there's an action plan.
yeah, yeah. And I think people wanna actually work on
Mhm.
something,
Mhm.
that you need to be vested in it, and I think that's what makes it hard. You just kinda cause people are busy, and, it's nice to talk, but you wanna be able to show something for it.
Mhm.
And talking about Jen, tomorrow night is her fundraiser.
Are you
Okay.
going?
Yeah, I'm going. Is anybody going? I can send out the invite again if you're interested in going. It's, I'll send it out.
Yes, I don't recall seeing it.
Yeah.
It's possible I did, I just don't
I think you
recall.
took a picture of the QR code
I did.
last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was like 30 days ago.
I know.
Seems like 30
I know, it
years.
seems like forever. But, all right, that is, all I have. I don't know if anybody has anything else to say. I don't have any other business, I guess we can't really talk about anything else, but
Good timing, 9:07, that's good.
9:07.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
So I know the town planner's on a he's more of a consultant. So why is it hard to get time with him? Is he just,
I'm sorry,
he
already saying something?
Donovan's
by the
talking.
hour? Why is it hard to get the town planner in a meeting?
He is part-time.
It's part-time.
He's contracted, so he's, very much part-time. So his time is
It's
limited.
limited, okay.
Yeah.
Does he go to the TPZ meetings?
No, he went to one. But he really, he's probably, he meets with Mika, I guess, and Tony, and I don't know what else.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him he was supposed to be working with Economic Development Commission as well, and I don't think he has attended those meetings yet, so I'm not sure what he's doing, though I think he's supposed to be like working with coordinating, because there's different planning efforts going on. You got the POCD going on, then you got the Woodbridge strategy, brownfields project going on. So you have a lot of different things that are kind of related that have to be coordinated. So I think he's actually working on that at the moment, just trying to make sure that gets coordinated, because there's a lot of coordination that's going on there.
Yeah.
So,
I have to start eating dinner before I come to these.
what's
I
that?
have to start eating my dinner before I come to these.
Oh, sorry. But you know that goes on to 9 o'clock. I did say I was gonna try to have like an hour and a half meetings, just kind of, so I think maybe it's gonna be a goal to try to have more. I'll try to run it where it's just an hour and a half, because I know this gets late. So I think we had a motion to adjourn by Lou. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Neither did I.
Elaine
I'm with
second.
you, I gotta go
Mary.
eat, I'm starving.
All in favor? Yay.
Bye.
Okay. All right, Mary, thanks and feel better.
Yes.
Thank you. Good
Okay,
night.
good night.
Good night, Mary.